Anyway, with that question, Charlie, what do you think about that?
Hello everyone, it's Ibrahim Abu Talib from Reservoir Solutions. Welcome to our webinar, Practical Seismic Interpretation. Let me introduce our company. Reservoir Solutions is a company specialized in providing technical studies and courses for oil and gas companies and professionals. Our company cooperates many professionals with diverse technical background related to oil and gas exploration and production. Our services are technical reservoir studies, field development planning, reservoir static and dynamic modeling, economic feasibility study, technical support for academic researchers, PhD and masters, assisting in writing technical papers and publishments, technical petroleum courses by industry experts, providing mentorship programs. Let me introduce our instructor, Mr. Muhammad Al-Ghamri. He is experienced geophysicist with 14 years of expertise in seismic interpretation and seismic inversion and prospect generation and well development. He is skilled in conducting structure and stratigraphic analysis, as well as borehole geophysics acquisition and processing. He also proven track record has also proven track record leading teams driving exploration success and delivering engaging lectures to enhance student learning as a lecturer in Alexandria University and conducted the courses training courses in more than 7 different countries such as Egypt, Algeria, Tunis, Libya, Nigeria, South Sudan, and etc. Our upcoming course is Practical Data Analysis and Machine Learning for Petroleum Engineers that will be held on 2nd July uh, 2025. Our webinar rules ask your questions in the chat box, mute your mic and camera, fill in the form which will send in the chat of the Zoom and also in the live of the YouTube to get your webinar certificate within 1 week, inshallah. Also join our Telegram channel for upcoming webinars and courses, and the link will be sent also in the Zoom chat. Contact us via our mail and our number, which also occur on LinkedIn and our pages on all social media. Mr. Muhammad.
Thank you, Ibrahim, for this introduction. Good morning, good evening, everybody. I would like to start our presentation today in Practical Seismic Interpretation webinar. But actually, I'm not gonna get into too much practical because this is only 1 hour webinar. We'll talk about the basics first. Why basics? Because unfortunately, most of the seismic interpreters they interpret the seismic data and use the seismic data as a real data, 100% real, and rely on it and make a confident on their interpretation without knowing the basic knowledge, because the basic knowledge help you to understand better the seismic interpretation. So let's start. What is the seismic wave propagations? The seismic waves, those waves we actually use dynamite in the past, or we use the vapor size to create these seismic waves. These seismic waves travel through the Earth's subsurface, and based on the behavior of the subsurface, based on the density, based on the velocity, based on the fluid content, based on the velocity variation, a lot of things get to make you see the bright amplitudes that you see when you make seismic interpretation. So what is the forward model? This is the basic model of seismic. The forward model is a simulation that predict how seismic waves propagate through the subsurface model. The impedance, acoustic impedance, and reflectivity into the wavelet to get the seismic. Let's go to it more simply. If we have two different layers of rocks, for example, we have sand, stone, and shale overlaid by each other. So the seismic waves and the incident waves, it have a velocity and density. We will call this Z1, and the shale will have velocity and density. So some of the waves will be reflected and the other waves will be transmitted. So what happens? It happens in the boundary between the sand and shale. So the reflections are caused by changes in velocity and density. So if you have in your seismic and you start to see the seismic interpretation and you can see a very bright reflectors, and this bright reflector you have beneath it maybe more than maybe 500 milliseconds, and this 500 milliseconds chaotic, then you have another bright reflector. You will jump to a conclusion that this is the same lithology at the top part. So the chaotic seismic and the frequency will change, and you will get a seismic reflector on the boundary. So if you have a thick limestone, for example, or a thick shale, this thick shale thickness is around 1,000 meters. You will never find an accurate and good reflection in the middle. You will find a very hard kick or a very hard trough only on the top and on the base. You can see some reflectors in the middle, of course, if you have some lithology variation. So let's get back here. We have the impedance, the acoustic impedance is the velocity versus the density. So if we are going to get the reflection coefficient, as we said, the Z2 is the acoustic impedance, the velocity and density of the layer 2, which is the shale, minus Z1, which is the sandstone, overlaid by Z2 plus Z1. So we calculate the ratio. This ratio, we called it reflection coefficient. So if I have this layered earth, we have a lot of sand, shale, marl, whatever, limestone, then the impedance increase because of increasing in the velocity or increasing in the density. Then we'll have here an increase in a positive reflection coefficient, and we'll have it a peak. If we have a decrease, we go to another layer, which is lower in acoustic impedance and lower in the velocity. It will give you a trough. So what we can say from this, because I saw in so many papers that any limestone give you a peak or any shale give you a trough. All of this not correct. The seismic itself, it doesn't give you an indication of the lithology itself. It gives you an indication of the variation of the lithology. Give you an indication that this lithology, it changed here. It never gives you indication of the lithology. If you want an indication of the lithology itself, you have to make seismic inversion. But the seismic in the simple way, it never gives you an indication about lithology. It gives you an indication about the acoustic impedance, give you indication about density and the velocity. You may have the same lithology if you have a hard limestone and beneath it some porous limestone. You will have a difference in the acoustic impedance, which would give you peak then trough. So put it a rule: the seismic never gives you a direct indication about the lithology. So the other concept is the wavelet. What is the wavelet? The wavelet is it's any artificial power that change in the seismic, that lead to a change in the seismic. Anything not related to lithology, not related to Earth itself, we call it wavelet. The wavelet not only from the marine gun or land dynamite or the vapor size, it may be noise. The noise, we can call it wavelet. So what happens and if you get to get the seismic? As you can see, we convolving. This is the Earth. Then we got the impedance. As you can see, as I said, we have here decrease in acoustic impedance, increase in acoustic impedance, decrease, then increase. So this is acoustic impedance, which give you, and this, you know that this layer will give you a very hard kick, and this layer will give you a soft kick, and whatever. Then we calculate the reflection coefficient. The reflection coefficient here is positive because we have increase in acoustic impedance, increase in density, then negative, then positive, then negative. After this, we'll make a convolution with the wavelet. So the wavelet in this area will convolve with the reflection coefficient and the superposition of the wavelet. What is meant by the superposition? It means that the wavelet will affect the lithology in this area. Then this in the decrease in the acoustic impedance, we will repeat this wavelet down below because this wavelet is repeatable at every section of the seismic itself. It convolved in the seismic itself. So the other one will repeat this wavelet into this kick, and this increase in acoustic impedance, it will give us a peak. Then, and this increase, it will give this decrease in the acoustic impedance will give us a trough. Again, it will give us peak, trough, peak, trough. So the wavelet here will be convolved in each layer and each seismic trace from the top to the bottom. Then this is the final recording trace. So if you know, this is, as you can see, here's an acoustic impedance, increase in acoustic impedance resulted in a peak, then decrease in acoustic impedance resulted in trough. Of course, we'll go through the polarity and see what is the difference between the polarity, the positive polarity and negative polarity and SEG polarity, because every constitution of the European polarity is different between the SEG polarity. So this is the recorded trace, and this is a seismic trace. Convolving this to the section, we'll get to the seismic section. So it's very important to know where is the seismic section comes from. Actually, the backward model means if you are talking about seismic inversion. The seismic inversion, we inverse the idea. We get the seismic section, this recording trace, we subtract the wavelet, and then we subtract the reflection coefficient to get to the impedance. The seismic inversion is about trying to hit a ball in the wall, and from the sound of the wall where this ball hits, try to know what is this lithology, what this wall is made of. So think about that you have a ball, and then you throw this ball into a wall, and then you hear this sound. You try to get from this sound what this lithology means. So this is the basic concept of the convolution and of the seismic trace itself. Let's have another concepts about the seismic and wave propagation. So if we have here, this is the magnitude of the amplitude, this is amplitude, and this is the magnitude of the amplitude. This is a peak, and this is a trough, which means that we have a positive amplitude, a positive increase in acoustic impedance, a positive reflection coefficient. But here we have a trough, which means a negative in acoustic impedance, a subtraction of the density and velocity. What is the wavelength? The wavelength is it's the area between two peaks or two troughs, and the frequency in this cycle, the time cycle, how much we get one peak then one trough. So get back to the polarity. As we said, the SEG polarity says that the peak is an increase in acoustic impedance with depth, but trough is a decrease in acoustic impedance. So they're opposite, the European conventional opposite of SEG. So before starting making your seismic interpretation or start doing anything, you have to know at first what is the polarity of the seismic that you have. Okay, so an ideal seismic response, as you can see here, we have here a layer. This layer is peak or increase in acoustic impedance. Here, I didn't say a peak and trough. When you get an VSP or check shot or trying to make an paper, Usually we say that the peak is increasing impedance to get the confusion between the SAG and the European convention. So the ideal seismic response, here we have a layer, then we have a difference in the layer. As you can see, the lithology change. Then we have this decrease in acoustic impedance. Then as you can see, the layering is very clear here. And you have the peak or trough, as we said, on the boundary of the two lithology, not in the whole lithology. That means when you are converting this to seismic, this area, you will see it as a chaotic. You will never see a hard kick or a hard peak or a hard trough because it's the same lithology. As you can see, this most probably is the limestone. Sorry for but as you can see, again, if you have here shale, then we have here sand, then we have here shale. The shale here, we have increase in acoustic impedance of the sand. That's why we give us a peak. Then a decrease in this acoustic impedance, then this when we have a trough. It's really, really important to imagine before you start interpreting, to imagine, to go to the field trips, to imagine the difference in strata, to imagine the seismic resolution. And what is the seismic resolution? Actually, all the textbooks say the seismic resolution is the ability to separate two features that are close together, that we have two features. But from my point of view, I have a different explanation of the seismic resolution. Because the seismic resolution, from my point of view, is the ability to distinguish this lithology in peak or trough. But if it's the thickness of the sand, let's say for the sand, is less than lambda divided by 4, it means that you will not see the sand. So a lot of interpreters says if the seismic resolution are 19 meters and you have 14 meters sand, you can never detect it, you can never map this reservoir. Actually, I'm against this theory because here comes the power of the seismic attributes. Why it happens? Because if you have a difference in the acoustic impedance, even if a little bit below the seismic resolution, it will never resolve in a peak or trough. But what will happen? You will go through the tuning effect. The tuning effect will decrease the magnitude of the amplitude of the seismic itself. So from this increase of the magnitude of the amplitude or decrease, you can detect it from the seismic attributes, making the sweetness. Of course, in the practical course, we'll go through this, how you can detect this increasement that will allow you to make the detection of the sandstone or detection of the reservoir or detection of the channel that you have. And also, of course, the resolution decreases was that. For thinner interval, amplitude progressively attenuated until the limit of visibility. As I said, from my point of view, lambda over the 4 is the main concept, but from my point of view, even if you are below the seismic resolution, you can detect a thin layers of the sandstone using the conventional seismic attributes. But you have to train your eyes first. What you are looking for, what is original, what is the positional environment, what is the stratigraphic traps that you are looking for. From my point of view, the most important thing in seismic interpretation is training your eyes and training your mind. And don't ever get the seismic to manipulate you. The seismic is a big manipulator. Don't let it manipulate you. Train your eyes before making and starting the seismic interpretation on what you see. As we said, this is two rocks, two limestone. We have here a different in acoustic impedance. As you can see, this is the porous limestone and this is a bulk limestone. So the acoustic impedance will differ in this because it's a combination of porosity, density, and velocity. Again, this is one of the most important basic concepts here. As we said, and as I said for the last 10 minutes or 15 minutes, that the density and the velocity are very, very important. So the velocity changes with porosity. The porosity affected the porosity a lot. As you can see, when the porosity increases, the velocity decreases. This is very important to know. Why it's very important now in detecting the porous limestone and the fracture reservoirs, and we'll get through this module in Petrel. We'll get this porous reservoir. You will know where the fracture area in the limestone, where the area that you can make it for unconventional reservoir, most probably. Because we were trying to get the porous media of the fractured reservoir in limestone here in Egypt. The most important thing that we are looking for is the porosity. The porosity in most of this limestone was below 5%. So if we want to get better than the 5%, we're looking for the dimming in the reflector, not for the bright ones. And we tracked the dimming in the reflector using the seismic attributes, and we got to a very, very good. So you have to know the basic concepts. The porosity affect the velocity. It's have a dramatic effect. Actually, the density have an effect, but not like the porosity. Going to one of the most important things about the velocity and gas saturation. Actually, this is one of the pitfalls of the seismic. As you can see, velocity with the gas saturation. 5% of gas saturation give you roughly same velocity like 100%. So if you are looking to make an DHI or looking for channel detection using the gas itself, will differ a lot. One moment, let me mute this. Okay. It will give you a very false reflector because it's only 5% of gas saturation will give you actually this bright spot that you will have it from 100% gas saturation. Actually, the other thing is external pressure. The external pressure means is the overburden pressure. When the overburden increase, which means the porosity will decrease, and which means the velocity will increase also. The pore pressure also have a very good indication and very hard indication on the seismic itself. So the pore pressure will be different. So you have to put all these basic relations in your mind while making the seismic interpretation, because these relations are very, very, very important. We'll get to why it's important. So let's go back to what I was saying in this diagram, the gas saturation. The DHI, what is a DHI? It's a dilute hydrocarbon indicator. It's a measurement that suggests the presence of hydrocarbon accumulation. And actually, as I said, it have a lot of pitfalls, but it's a very, very, very strong tool. So what is the bright spot? If we have here a water sand and the base sand, we'll find that the base sand have a lower impedance than the water sand, and will give you a hard peck. Let's can see here this hard peck on the seismic. As you can see, this is unusual amplitude. This unusual amplitude says and decides and give you an indication that you have a gas in this area. But actually, it's very important that you will only 5% of gas saturation will give you the same bright amplitude as you can see in 100% gas saturation. Even if the gas have migrated and going through the migration, it will give you the same and the difference. Actually, we'll have here also a flat spot, which means a flat spot, it indicates the water, the oil-water contact or oil-gas contact. As you can see, this is a very important slide. We have here a four-way depth closure, as it see. We have here a structure, and as you can see from this structure, we have here this bright amplitude. From the RMS, as you can see, the from the RMS amplitude, you will see this is the channel of the sand body which is saturated with the gas. But the other bodies are have low saturation with the gas. This is two bays above each other. Look up here, this is the upper area. You can see here also a bright amplitude, which indicated a gas. Again, it indicates a gas in place, but doesn't indicate the content or the gas saturation itself. The pitfalls in DHI, this is the most important pitfall, because unusually strong lithologic variations may cause a bright spot because of lithology variation, because of chemical alteration in the rocks, because of diagenesis, chemical diagenesis. All of this may give you the indication about what's so. Let's go to structural interpretation workflow. What is the workflow? We will discuss this workflow, of course, in the upcoming course. Yes. Okay. We'll discuss in the upcoming course what to make a seismic interpretation. First of all, data preparation. And from my point of view, data preparation is one of the most data conditioning, again, data conditioning, data conditioning, data conditioning. Rubbish in, rubbish out, garbage in, garbage out. If you didn't make a data conditioning and the proper input of every single piece of the data, you will get garbage, you will get misleading data. Petrel, the course that we'll use in the course, Petrel is a very easy software to load the data into, but it's very easy to be manipulated also. It's very easy if you make something not correct, or even in the data input, if you didn't put the actual CRS or the good CRS, will have a lot of problems, because I have seen in my career that one of the wells were made, the stacking and the survey were made using the blue belt here in Egypt, but all the other wells were made using the red belt. It's a different coordinate systems. But when they input this well were input as in a purple belt, not the blue belt, although it was the survey was in a blue belt. What a red belt, sorry. What happened? Happened, this well was the location of the well. Excuse me. The location of the well weren't correct, which led to a collision while drilling. A collision, and they suffered from more than $6 million loss because only of the data input that they didn't input the survey correctly. So the seismic data, the data input, the data conditioning, data conditioning, data conditioning, data conditioning, the well logs, and for the velocity data. Velocity data, of course, very important. If you are importing the check shot or importing the VSP, the coordinate stack, you have to know how to put it correct and how to make the QC of this data, how to just delete the uncorrected data, delete the uncorrected point. Then we'll go to the interpretation. The interpretation, well seismic type. Of course, before making the well to seismic type, we have to make the splicing of the sonic log. We have to make a very good match in the check shots. Then start with the horizon picking, the horizon tracing, then the fault identification and reconstruction, then reading, then contouring, and getting to the most important, the prospect area. Don't ever look to yourself as a geophysicist that your main output will be the structure map. This is not correct. Think that you are a prospect generator. Think about prospect. Actually, we are running business. We are not in an educational institute. We are running business. The most important about business is those two areas, the prospect and project economics. The economics are very, very important. And from my point of view, it's one of the most important things to learn now. Recently, we're making interviews for oil and gas juniors to conduct one of the companies that I worked on. And what happened is, when I making the interviews, I found a lot, maybe more than 80% of the candidates, they didn't know anything about the economics of the oil and gas. Actually, this is a disaster because, as I said, we are running a business. We are not running an educational institute. You have to know about the economics. You have to know about the EMV, the MPV, all of this. You have to know what is the EMV, how to calculate the expected monetary value, what is the net present value, what is the depreciation. All of this have to be known, and you have to know it, because, as I said, a lot of the geophysicists and the geoscientists doesn't know the basic concept about the economics and the economics of the oil and gas. And what is the hurdle factor? What is the MPV? What is the EMV? All of this they don't know about, and this is very, very important. So put in your mind that your aim is to make a prospect, not only making a map. Make a prospect. You are an oil and gas explorationist. Try to find the oil and gas. Okay. I'll go through interpreting the faults in a quick way. What is the difference between the structural concept and the structural observation? The structural observation, what I say because of the concept, like the tectonic settings. If I have a diversion zone, or conversion zone, or strike slip zone, or mobile superstrate, what I can see it on seismic line. I can see the fault segment on seismic line. I can see the fault plane orientation. But put in your mind, before making your structural observation, you have to know your structural concept. Put in a two papers that you know that in late Cretaceous we have an orogeny. This orogeny is a strike slab. This is a tension. This is a compression. But in Jurassic we have a tension. We have to put in your mind also when the fault move. Are these faults have a regeneration in what age? You have to know all of this before starting even the fault interpretation. You have to look at the seismic and to subdivide this seismic to structural origin. How can we recognize the fault? As you can see, we have here a clear fault. How we recognize it? A termination of reflections. And actually, the termination of reflections is one of the most important thing. And this is what we use in variance. Variance and coherence, their seismic attributes are used to detect the faults and detect the structure. Not only the fault of the structure, by the way, from my point of view, variance is a very, very, very good tool to indicate the stratigraphic changes even in channels. Why this? Because it's a module was trained to detect the termination of the reflections. So as you can see here, you have a trough, and that's a trough terminated here. This peak terminated here. That's why variance will give you a very good indication of the fault. Your eye will give you a very good indication of the fault. But if you have a channel, also the channel will have discontinuity of the borders of the channel. It will give you also a change in variance. So don't use a variance as a structural attributes only. Actually, myself, I use the variance in many, many projects as a stratigraphic, and I indicated the channels and the boundary of the channels by variance. Very, very, very good. And after you indicated by the variance, you can go to Petrel and track this variance as a geobody extraction. You will have a bright, and you can input actually in your structural model. Also, how we can recognize the fault by offsetting the stratigraphic markers, by abrupt change in depth, by abrupt change of seismic pattern, by fault plane reflections, and this is very important. As you can see here, this is not seismic reflections, it's a fault plane reflectors. Here is a fault plane reflector. This is not correct. When you have a depth or a fault plane reflector, you will find the reflection is very strange and associated folding and discontinuity. Actually, in Petrel, I just added two or three slides how to make the fault interpretation in Petrel. This is from the upcoming courses, 2 or 3 slides. It will be subdivided by you. And in those slides, it will give you in Petrel how to make interpretation of the fault. From my point of view, I like a lot using the keyboard. Here's the F, cut segment by T, shift and S. B, I use all with the in the keyboard. And this here, how you can get to interpretation manual and how you put all the interpretation, fault 1, fault 2, or whatever. And it's very important to name the fault and know where is each one of the faults. I just left you here 2 or 3 slides to help you in fault interpretation and how to make a manual picking. From my point of view, this fault interpretation is not good enough. Try to make it to decrease the points while interpreting the fault as much as you can with respect to the geology, as you can see. And the most important thing, try before start interpreting the fault, no orientation of the fault plane. You have to be perpendicular in the structure, and to pick when I will pick this fault on the inline or on the using the cross line. Then I left you some slides about the fault segment. For the other part of the presentation, we started with the basic concepts, then going to the fault interpretation and what is and how to get the fault interpretation using Petrel. Now, from my point of view, this is the most important section of this slides, is developing a philosophy of the seismic interpretation. First thing to put in your mind, geology first, always. Seismic data is a tool, but not the truth. Seismic data is manipulating. It will manipulate you. Like at this section, if we have this is strata and this is strata, one of the interpreter will interpret this fault as a reverse fault. The other one will interpret it as a normal fault. How could we know which interpretation is correct and which interpretation is not correct? How could we know? The key is the regional geology. That's why I said before you have to subdivide your seismic section to the structural regimes. Each area, what structural regimes? As you know, this is a very, very, very easy example, but actually I have seen geophysicists made an error like this, and they interpreted a normal fault as a reverse fault, and make a well and put a well proposal, and this well was drilled. Of course, it was a dry hole because of lack of interpretation. Because he started to make the seismic interpretation without reading the regional, without reading the geology. So again, geology first, always. Seismic data is a tool, but it's not the truth. Geology is the truth that we seek. Always begin with the regional geological understanding before looking to the seismic. Regional geological understanding. Build interpretations based on the geological process, not just reflectors. Again, seismic is manipulating. Use a seismic as a window in structural, positional, and diagenetic history. The next thing for my philosophy is every pixel tells a story. Noise, it may be random. The noise will be random. You will not find the noise continuous, but reflectors are never meaningless because the reflectors are getting to acoustic impedance. So try to treat your 3D seismic as a tapestry of your Earth history. Avoid the confirmation bias. And actually, this is very, very important thing. What is a confirmation bias in how our mind think? Our mind, and let's go to psychology. Our mind, when think about the psychology, we have a confirmation bias that our mind manipulates us. What is the confirmation bias? Is try to find all the data that which support your interpretation and neglect anything that said your interpretation is not correct. Just trying to looking for everything that supports your idea. You have to know that confirmation bias is one of the most important bias that affects geophysicists. Confirmation bias. You have to be open to all the scenarios. You have to be open. Let the data speak before forcing to a model. Don't ever force a model. Try to look about each reflector and honor the complexity. Never make your map over smooth. Never. Nature is complicated, so our structure should be complicated. Our stratigraphy should be complicated. Everything should be complicated. Don't oversimplify. Honor this complexity. Again, integration is intelligence because seismic is a very powerful tool when joined with wells, logs, screws, and concepts. And concept, one of the most important. From my point of view, you cannot be good geophysicist before having a very strong background on geology, very strong background in wells, very strong background in cores, and how to create, how to understand the core reports. You have to use all the available data. one of the pitfalls that we make, that work in isolated islands. The petrophysicist work in his own island, the geophysicist work in his own island, the reservoir engineer works in his own island. This is not correct. Even the reservoir engineer, we use the production data to know, should I put a fault here if I have a doubt about a minor fault? Should I put a fault here? Should I put a facies here? Integrate geochemistry. Geochemistry is very, very important and one of the most neglectable in oil and gas industry. Geochemistry is often the key because geochemistry is about maturation. It's about oil itself. It's about that we are trying to get the oil and gas. Involves sedimentology, structure, geology, petrophysics. Again, seismic interpretation, petroleum system analysis. We create the structure identification, stratigraphic identification, facies interpretation, going to the geochemistry, as I just said, the source rocks, reservoir, the trap, seal, what is the petroleum system that we have. Then getting to the most important thing, geological risk and economics. You have to know that interpretation are equations. There is no single answer. We have many, many answers. We have many answers. Always test multiple geological scenario. You have to put a lot of scenarios in your mind. Create an alternate models that challenge your own assumptions. Again, for the philosophy, the resolution has a limit, but imagination must not. Never underestimate your imagination and never put, you have to let your mind free. Don't put your imagination in a prison. You have to put your mind free because most of oil and gas is not discovered yet. It's lying in our minds. What you don't see is as important as what you do. Imagination is the key. Geophysics is 80% art and imagination, only 20% geology. 80% imagination. 80% imagination. You have to understand the vertical and horizontal resolution and limitation. Try to use seismic attributes, inversion, AVO, coherence, try to see deeper. Look at every single piece of data and think about what features are below resolution. As I said, fractures, thimbles. When I was talking about in this lecture, as I said in this webinar, we try to use the damming and the amplitude of the seismic to get the fracture, and we already get this fracture and map the fracture and drilled for unconventional reservoirs, and we drilled very successful wells. Actually, this is one of the most important. Technology is a lens, not a crutch. Please be a geophysicist, not a software physicist. Great interpreters use tools, but don't be a slave to Petrel or to any other software. Don't rely on the software. You are the one who running the software. You have to know each trick of the software, of course, but don't rely on the software 100%. You have to use imagination. Don't be a slave to the software. Please be a geophysicist. Don't be a software physicist. I have a lot of geophysicists that I call them, you are a software physicist. You rely on the software, will give you a very good map, very good looking map, over smooth, and try to dwell here. But actually, he can use the software good, but he doesn't understand the geology. He doesn't understand what he do. He doesn't even understand what those module in the software use. Actually, most of this I can see in seismic inversion. The seismic inversion gives you a colorful, very good colorful image. But what this colorful image is depending on, if you change any one of the parameters or any of the parameters, it will change a lot. So if you're looking only for color, you will get the color. But if you don't have the geology in your mind, you will never get to a prospect, you will never get to a successful exploration. One of the philosophy, what is your purpose? Is it greenfield? So when I'm making the interpretation for greenfield, now I'm looking for a major structure. I don't have to interpret 2 lines by 2 lines. I can interpret even 20 lines by 20 lines to know where the major structure is and to start to make the leads, then try to identify the prospects, but try to make the leads first. Whatever I'm making brownfield, most of people think that the rules of geophysics in brownfield or even in exploration brownfields or the mature fields are not good enough or not important enough. Actually, this is 100% incorrect. Actually, from my point of view, the rule of geophysics in brownfields are most important. Why of this? I'm gonna give you one example. This example from one of my published papers. Uh, will end the presentation with. This paper was published in Oil and Gas Conventional here in Egypt. As you can see, in this we have here an old map with a well which is plug and abandoned for one of the structures. Before making a dry hole analysis, I started making reinterpretation of the seismic. As you can see here, you can see a very good structural trap three-way depth closure, very good, very confirmed. Actually, it's a good three-way depth closure. So why this is plug and abandoned well? We tried to go back. This well was